everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for Uncle Frank at the Mill Valley Film Festival 43. And joining us today is a great pleasure. We have the writer and director, Alan Ball, as well as the cast members, Paul Bettany, Peter Macdissi, and Sophia Lillis. So starting with you, Alan, simply, it's a beautiful time capsule of a movie, but it also is quite vivid in how it reminds us that things like family and demons and love never change in a lot of ways. What exactly inspired you to write the movie, and how long might it have been germinating in your mind?
When I was 33 years old, I was living in New York City, and I went back to my hometown of Marietta, Georgia, to come out of the closet to my mother. And it did not go as well as it does in Uncle Frank, in the scene with Paul and Margot Martindale. And she said to me, well, I blame your father for this because I think he was that way too. And my head exploded. And then the next day we were driving around North Georgia, and we drove past a lake, and she very nonchalantly said, well, that's where Sam Lassiter drowned. And I never heard of Sam Lassiter, so I asked who it was, and she said, well, he was a real good friend of your daddy's. And then I later found out that Sam had drowned, and my dad had accompanied his body on a train back to their hometown of Asheville, North Carolina. And I just started thinking about that. I don't know if my dad was gay or wasn't, because he was already dead by the time my mom said that. But I started thinking about this scenario, and it just sort of took over, and I guess it germinated for definitely months, maybe even years. And then when I finally sat down and started writing it, it took me about 8 months, I think, to finish it.
Right. And let's talk a little bit about the casting then. It's a wonderful cast. How did you go about looking for our three principals? And who did you invite first?
Well, I've worked with Peter a lot, and I knew that he would be perfect for Wally. And then I saw Sophia in the HBO miniseries Sharp Objects, and I thought, who's this girl? She's amazing. I can't, I just want to watch her. And she was exactly the right age. So we got in touch with her people and sent the script, and she responded to it, and then all that was left was the role of Uncle Frank. We sent the script to Paul's agent, and I'm at the same agency, and his agent passed it on to him, and then we had a phone conversation. It was a really lovely phone conversation, and I could just tell that we were on exactly the same page and the same wavelength, and that he understood exactly what the movie was that we were trying to make. And so he signed on, and we had our three main actors.
Right. Paul, let's start with you, because you're the title character. When it came to sort of finding a mode of connection or something that you really found a hook into in terms of understanding Frank better, what was your process in exploring that?
I don't mean to bore my fellow actors and director because they've heard the story before, but I'm just going to bore you. I read it, I loved it, it's beautiful. I was too frightened to do it, and then I read it again, and I told my agents, I was like, I'm just not sure this is for me. And the truth was, I didn't know that I wanted to go to the place that I was going to have to go to, and that place was that my dad was gay, and he was, closeted until 63, and then went back in the closet when his partner died when he was 80, and which was the most difficult bit of it all, because I think the sort of repression of all of that led to some really strange behavior, the secrecy and led to some very problematic behavior that impacted my life. And so it really was a sort of journey of for me, it's Alan's story that he wrote, but my sort of personal emotional journey through it was a sort of path of understanding and forgiveness. And it is, of course, the most edifying. Well, it's the only edifying bit of being an actor, really, is imagining yourself in somebody else's shoes, you know, in hopefully a quite thorough way. And I think it personally helped me let go of a lot of stuff. Stuff. Yeah, and so it was frightening and fascinating, and in the end, I mean, I think you can feel the movie is made with such love, and we all love working with each other, and the movie really is about, you know, the transcendence of love, and yeah, I found it an incredibly healing, amazing experience. Absolutely.
Sophia, the movie's really interesting because we see you and Paul's characters follow on parallel tracks, where his is a coming out story and yours is a coming of age story. And we see that how 4 years and her naivete, and she learns to accept and understand so much more and become more perceptive as the film goes on. What was your approach toward that character, and what was the rapport that you brought, that you built with Paul, in terms of making two very disparate family members who also have so much in common make that work?
Right. Well, what I really loved about this character was that she wasn't telling this. Not really telling the story, but the stuff, everything that's happening is going through her eyes. She's witnessing everything, and it's this story, this simple kind of, not simple, but just kind of on the road story is kind of it is her coming of age, because this is how she grows up to be this person that she is, this independent woman who doesn't really, she's very kind of innocent in the beginning. She doesn't really know much about the world. She thinks she does, and she thinks she knows her uncle Frank, the person that she idolizes, and then she realized the world is much bigger than her, you know, the small country town that she lives in with her family. It's something different and something new, and it's definitely a character that I was very drawn to. I am growing up right now. I just got out of high school. And now that I'm out, I realized that there's so much I have to prepare for. And there's so much that I did not expect it would be so hard. And I sometimes I think back to this character and how she had to go through this and watch her person that she idolizes go through this terrible thing, and she realizes that I don't want to be a part of this terrible thing. I don't want to be a part, like this family, that she wants to be better. She wants to be a better version of herself, and she wants to be a part of his life. And she grows to be a great person because of this. And I just really, I love that.
And then Peter, you've worked with Alan on 6 Feet Under and on Talhead. So do you already have a very natural rapport with him? And what kind of role did you play? Because there's so many really critical scenes that you have with Paul and with Sophia, where we learn so much about their characters by throwing Wally into the mix. What was your approach to that? And talk about the rapport you have with Alan just naturally over time.
Well, I mean, yeah, obviously I've worked with Alan before, and I know how he works, and he knows how I work. And so there aren't a lot of hiccups on the way. There are a few, but not a lot. And so when I first read the script, I was sort of surprised by the character and it being offered to me, because I thought normally I'm not cast like in roles like that. I'm always like sort of cast in like a, self-flagellating psychiatrist or a conservative stern father or like a bisexual asshole who manipulates their students or whatever. So Wally was like a novelty to me, and I was kind of confused at first for a minute or two. I was confused and I just didn't know what he is. I mean, I would have loved to go to Saudi Arabia to explore his background because I've never been. But at the time I couldn't because I'm Catholic, and at the time I needed an invitation to go to Saudi Arabia. So that didn't happen. So I had to use my imagination in trying to understand how he grew up, his relationship with his family, with his mother specifically, and his brother, and the cultural and the religious background that he comes from. And what's it like when he moves to America and he lives with this man and he's homosexual? And what is he trying to achieve through this man? And to me, it's like wanting Frank to be with his family was a way for Wally to have a family that he could never have with his own, without necessarily losing the intimacy that he has with his own family. But nevertheless, that part of it, he was never going to get it with his family, and which we see like through his phone calls with his mother. So he wanted to support Frank to rekindle his relationship with his family, because of having a family is very important, obviously, like the movie, like the movie states, basically. Working with Sophia and Paul was great. I mean, with Sophia, I just had to look at her face and do nothing. And with Paul, I mean, I trusted, I would just we were playing tennis all the time, and that was really quite smooth, I have to say. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah. And Paul was in Wimbledon, so of course we know how good of a tennis player he is. Alan, in addition to this trio of really terrific actors, you really brought the gold standard of supporting characters from Lois Smith, Margot Martindale, Steve Zahn, Judy Greer, Stephen Root. How easy was it to collect all these people? And did you get a chance to have everyone spend some time to rehearse or to explore their own dynamics?
It was one of those instances where I just got in touch with each one of these actors' agents and said, we're making this movie and I think your client would be amazing, and can I send you the script? And everybody said yes. And these were, it was very exciting for me because these are all actors who I have tremendous respect for. And I knew that they would create such vivid characters and texture, and it was very exciting to get a chance to work with this cast for me. We didn't really have a rehearsal period. I think we shot in Wilmington, North Carolina, and I think most of them showed up the day before we started shooting their scenes. But they're such pros that it just, it feels like they had, a week or two of rehearsal because everybody, it seems like such a family to me.
Completely. And I like the fact that we see a lot of what the characters are like with the father around, but we don't know quite what to expect once they all return, because we knew the father defined a certain patriarchal enforcement that unshackled, we don't know quite what to expect from any of the characters, including
right.
Paul and Sophia. When it comes to shooting in the South, first of all, how long was the shoot, and what was your principle around exploring locations?
Well, the shoot was 25 days, and we didn't really, it was a very bare bones budget for this movie, so we didn't have the resources to build anything. So we just had to hope that we could find places that would work, and we did. I actually think, Daddy Mac's house, if I were to build a set, it would be that. It was so perfect. Frank and Wally's New York apartment was this strange old apartment building in downtown Wilmington that, oddly enough, they had shot some scenes of Blue Velvet in many years ago. But it just completely looked like a New York apartment. And the lake and the pier and all of these places, it just felt kind of like in a way, it was almost too easy, because every time we were looking for a location, we'd find it, and it would be, yeah, this will work. This will, not only will this work, this will be really perfect.
And this is the first time we've really, I think, explored, you know, going into the Deep South in one of your films. Talk about a little bit about the Southern tradition, because I think the film evokes people like Tennessee Williams and Carson McCullers, who are very Southern domestic. You know, there's a lot of family, there's a lot of repression, but there's a lot of connection in different ways. Talk a little bit about them and possibly any other authors that have inspired you.
Well, certainly those are both authors that have really, were really influential to me, because I grew up in the South. I grew up in a large extended family. I had 3 siblings, and my mom was one of 6 children. And so there were tons of aunts and uncles and cousins, and so all the Southern atmosphere in the movie is pretty authentic, in that it's based on my own life in terms of, you know, family dynamic and family structure and the way people talk to each other and that kind of thing. What was the second part of your question? I'm sorry.
Oh, just about any other inspirations you had about kind of the Southern tradition that you grew up in and the literary traditions that joined it.
Well, I'm a huge fan of Eudora Welty, who is an amazing Southern writer, just because her work is so atmospheric and so evocative. Definitely Carson McCullers, definitely Tennessee Williams, William Faulkner. Those are the ones that jump to mind right now.
Yeah, they're the legends for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, Paul, you play a literature professor, and it feels very credible how, at the same time, he's very casual and very honest in his Southern home, but you can tell that he's also very tightly wound. And the more time we see you with Wally, the more we see how much of an opposites attract kind of dynamic exists there. Tell us a little bit about exploring that part of the character, as well as just what kind of look you adapted to reinforce it.
Well, actually, we talked a lot about this, you know, having a sort of life that is very split, you know, and my father clearly had a life that was very split, and you know, he's one person in New York and another when he's you know, home down south, and the complications that must lead to just inside one's head of keeping everything straight, for want of a better word. You know, I think that, so we talked about that, a lot about that, and a lot about sort of clothing choices and choices, even the choice to have a mustache, you know, in that era means one thing when you're in New York City, and it means a very different thing when you're, you know, back home down south. And so we had a lot of fun talking about that, and also the I mean, that's the sort of that's the sort of joy at the end of the movie. On one level, is the sort of uniting of these two parts of Frank into something that can be whole, and you know, through the healing of and you know, teaching of Peter's character and Sophia's character, and his family's general acceptance. So yeah, we talked a lot about that schism. The schism is important so that it can be joined at the end of the movie, and God is in his heaven and the sun is shining, and it feels like a well-earned happy ending to me.
Well, the movie is a great reminder that sometimes a closet can be as big as a city, you know, where, you know, as long as he's there, he's safe.
Right.
Peter, I think as strong as the dialogue is, one of the wonderful things about Wally is that he says so much with his eyes and with that beaming smile, and so much of the expressiveness is nonverbal. What did you bring to, from your experience or from your honing into the character of Wally that allowed you to make those kinds of choices about how he expresses himself?
Well, Wally to me, he's just sunshine. He's just sunshine. He's always happy. He's always positive. He sees the good thing in life. He always sees that. Very foreign to me, by the way. I mean, that's like a concept that I don't understand, honestly, but he's so positive. It was kind of irritating to me as an actor because it was really something that I had never done before. And it was a bit challenging in that regard. And just to trust to bring that positive energy, and that is enough. That took me like a little bit to get used to. But you get inspired by my dog, by my chow, who's like this. He's like Buddha. He's always happy. You just get inspired by things you never think of, and not necessarily people. So you just try to derive from that, basically, that positive energy all the time. Every character has its own energy in a way. There's like something that drives them, and I think his pursuit of finding home and love and family is what motivates him to be so sort of tenacious about it, and he does it with such grace and such kindness. And you learn from your characters sometimes too as actors, which I really did in this case from Wally. I like him.
He's impossible not to like, and there's something quite fearless.
You're so much nicer after the film, Peter, than you were before. I mean, we've all been talking about it. So I mean, so that was kind of fun and cool to play for a change,
Well, there's something very fearless about allowing yourself to be that vulnerable and that open all the time. And
absolutely. And I remember talking to Alan, I think it's just but Alan, I mean, Frank hits him at the end, his reaction to show up in the grid. How are we going to do this? What's going to, that was one of the hardest things, the bumps that I had about the character, is that after such a punch, he still goes out and to just console him, and he sees how broken he is because he knows his history and whatever had happened to him. I mean, so generous, so big-hearted. It's really inspiring in so many ways. I mean, we're not used to that in this culture specifically, to have characters be that way, and I kind of enjoy playing that.
It's a wonderful performance, the way you react with everyone. Sophia.
Oh, thank you.
You've been acting for a while, but you still probably face a lot of new challenges with every single project. What was one of the biggest things you had to face up to, or really were very happy about taking on the challenge of with this film?
Let's see. Well, yes, what I think about with every project that I am a part of, it's always a learning experience for me, because I am still in the process of learning. I've still so much to learn, and especially getting to work with these amazing actors. I usually just work with kids my age, but this time I get to really see adults working, professional actors, and I knew I had to learn a lot from them. And, my character is it's kind of narration, a lot of kind of through her eyes. So basically she's learning, and because it's coming of age, she's slowly coming to terms with that. And all I really had to do was I was doing that as well, standing back and watching everyone. And it was a little hard for me, because it was a new character. It was something I haven't really done before, and it was also the accent, horrible at accents. But I got to try to learn a little bit of that Southern twang. That was hard for me personally. What else? I'm thinking of, there's a lot of things, a lot of problems that come up when you're working with something. There's always something that's hard, something that's complicated, and but with those complications, you learn. So it was a little hard. I was a little intimidated by working with a lot of these professional big actors, but it just made me want to get even better and pull my punches. That's what is that the no, it's probably not the saying. What is that?
Your punches.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Sure.
Roll with the punches. Yeah.
Roll with the punches. That's what it is.
And
That's all I
Bring your A game is what you did. As a viewer, we saw your A game, and it's very, very impressive. So.
And Sophia, your work ethic, and that's all you can really hope for when you're working with other actors. Your work ethic is so sort of extraordinary and on point, and you were just always so present. And I would like to say I learned a lot from you about letting myself be and really being in the moment. So I wouldn't learn too much from us septuagenarians. Yeah, you've got it all going on. You know, don't you worry.
Thanks.
Alan, this is your second theatrical feature as a director, but you've done a lot of work on television. Do you have a different approach in terms of stylistically or in terms of composing the frame or a visual sense when you're dealing with television versus films?
Not really, because both of the movies that I've directed have been such low budget movies that the amount of time we have to do them is not that different than the television shows I've worked on. To me, a movie is like a short story and a series is like a novel. But you still have to have compelling characters and complicated and emotionally relatable situations. And it's also, you know, it's such a collaborative process. A lot of it, you know, this may look different because I worked with this cinematographer on this project and this other cinematographer on this project. And I don't really, I've never worked on a movie where you had like 6 months so that you can get every single moment perfect. So I don't know what that's like. But I don't approach them differently in terms of being in production and shooting, no.
Yeah. If you don't mind a little flashback, this is the 20th anniversary of you winning your Academy Award for original screenplay.
It is.
What have you learned, and I'm sure a lot, but what have you learned about the trajectory of your craft when it comes to writing for the big or small screen? And what do you recognize as the things that you probably needed to learn the most that you're glad you did?
Good luck, Alan.
Wow. I had such a charmed entry into the industry. I was a starving playwright in New York, and I got a job offer to come write for a sitcom, and I came out here and I wrote for a sitcom, and it was a horrible experience, except it taught me a lot about economy because, you know, if it wasn't furthering the story, why is it there? But between American Beauty and 6 Feet Under and then True Blood, I sort of worked in a industry that doesn't seem to exist for me anymore in terms that, you know, there was not a lot of studio or network interference. It was pretty much just allowed to, it's just a different landscape now. And a lot of that has to do with just the way the business is changing. And, you know, I don't think American Beauty would even get made as a movie today, honestly. In a way, I'm having to kind of unlearn stuff that I took for granted in terms of, you know, just in terms of collaborating and the development process, which I didn't really have a lot of experience being a part of. And this movie was a little bit like those old days where we just made a movie and there weren't a lot of people around, questioning every choice that was made, and we just got to make the movie we wanted to make. I hope I answered your question. I feel like I just sort of rambled.
Absolutely. Everyone's a work in progress, so
yeah.
learn as much.
But there's so much I have to learn. And I just, that's one of the great things about the process of filmmaking is you get to work with these amazing people who bring so much to the table that wasn't a part of what you were originally, I'm not a believer in that idea that like the auteur makes everything. To me, it's hugely, hugely collaborative. And I've been so fortunate in the past and in this movie as well, that I got to work with people who really had a lot to teach me. And that's part of the joy of it for me.
Yeah. Well, Uncle Frank has a lot of tears and has a lot of real, hard moments, but it earns the wrap up that's really warm and generous, honestly. So starting with Peter, and we can go one by one, just describe one moment or one scene or one sensation you remember from making the movie that will always stick with you as a really positive experience.
As a positive experience. My favorite scene is the hallway scene, when Wally confronts Frank about his alcoholism. And I really, really enjoyed working on that scene, as small as it is. But there was a connection there somehow that really worked for me for some reason. And that's a scene I will always remember.
Okay. How about you, Sophia?
I do remember there was that one scene where I yell at the engineer. Mechanic guy. I don't think I've ever really had a role where I had an outburst like that. But that was a really fun, a lot of relieving a lot of tension scene, just ragging on that poor man. But it was fun. It was a lot of fun. And that actor took it like a champ. But that was a lot of fun doing that with these two guys staring at me. That was an experience. I love that scene.
It's a great scene, given how much outbursts you do in it. Just the fact that you're able to take complete control of the situation was a really great thing to see in that scene.
Thank you.
How about you, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, I loved, as Peter was mentioning, the scene in the hallway together where he first notices that I'm drunk, and what I loved about it was the sort of assumption of a relationship without playing the relationship. We just assumed the relationship, which is what people are like when they've been together for 1,000 years, But the two other things that come to mind are the dinner in New York scene with the families and pretending the marriage, which was just, we were all besides ourselves laughing, Alan included, because, we had some really funny actors. And it was just one of those delicious evenings shoots. But also the sort of kindness of Alan, and it's really rare, when we shot the graveyard scene, and Alan realizing that despite our minuscule budget and really difficult schedule, that I was done and needed to be sent home. And that was a really, that was an act of heroic kindness, bearing in mind the size of our budget. Was just recognize that I really needed to go and have a sleep. And I loved him for it. So those are three. You only asked for one, so yeah, it's a freebie.
And what about you, Alan? What are you always going to remember and embrace from this shoot?
Gosh, so much. I mean, I don't have a favorite moment or a favorite scene. I love the scene in the kitchen between Beth and Frank when he says, "Are you going to be the person that everybody else wants you to be, or are you going to be who you decide to be?" I love the whole party sequence from the moment when Wally opens the door until they hit the road. I love that entire sequence. I love that dinner scene with the family that Paul just brought up. It was really, really fun and funny. I love the hallway scene that Peter loves. I love the mechanics. I love all of it. For me, it was just a joy from beginning to end. Getting you know, to make this movie and to make it with these people who loved it as much as I do, you know. And it was just a rare and wonderful experience and one of the highlights of my career and of my life.
Well, it was a joy for us to be able to share this with our festival audience. We really appreciate you giving it to us to be ambassadors for. And thank you so much for being here today to talk to us about the film. We really appreciate it. We hope you have a great remainder of the year. And take care, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much, Sterling. Thank you. That was very kind. Thank you.
Bye.